Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Grantees Positioned for Success seminar. On today, we're certainly pleased to welcome each and every one of you into today's session that specifically highlights searching for suitable grants. So without further ado, I would like to now introduce our speaker for today, which is none other than Ms. Caroline Curry. Ms. Curry has been a part of the Mercer University School of Medicine staff and faculty since 2007. She has worked in a variety of positions in the community medicine and medical library departments, supporting faculty, students, and residents with their research projects. In these various roles that she has served, she has provided expert searches of the biomedical literature, assisted faculty and students with technical writing of manuscripts, provided grant writing services to faculty, identified funding opportunities for grants and scholarships, and also taught evidence-based medicine to residents and medical students. Her research interests include exploring trends in biomedical scholarly communication, open access publishing, and health information literacy. So without further ado, I will now turn it over to Ms. Caroline Curry.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see that? Can I get a thumbs? Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to, at least when we go, there's going to be a portion of today's session where I'm going to go out into some databases and show you how to actually search. So at some point during the presentation, I'm probably going to mute my video just so it won't be distracting with all the screens. So thank you, Dr. Williams. So today I have been asked to talk to you about searching for suitable grants. And as Kedrick had mentioned, I've been at Mercer for quite a while. Within the past couple of years, I've taken on an additional role of providing grant support. So hopefully some of the things that I have learned, I'll be able to share with you. Specifically, I think one of the reasons that I was given this role is as a librarian, we have to search for all kinds of information. And as you know, if you're on the call today, I'm sure you're familiar with grants, and trying to find grants is like a research project in itself. So hopefully today you'll be able to take some of this information back to your institution and share with your groups and get hopefully funded. So today our learning objectives, we're going to focus on how to locate funding opportunities, and we're going to review 3 resources: NIH Reporter, grants.gov, and the Foundation Directory Online. And again, as I mentioned just a moment ago, I have found that it's most beneficial to attendees to actually like kind of go out of the slideshow, so you're not just having to stare at slides for an hour. So later in the session, I'm going to actually pop out and do some live searching. So hopefully, you'll be able to see how these resources work in action. So before we get into the resources, I want to introduce you to a graphic that it's been really helpful for me, to demonstrate the whole life cycle of a grant. So during the grants process, typically you will develop your project idea before searching for a funding source. However, oftentimes this step occurs during the process that you're looking for funding. So, it kind of goes hand in hand. It doesn't necessarily, sometimes you look for funding first and then you develop an idea. So they do kind of go together. You also might notice as you are looking for funding that your project idea will evolve. So, with these, keeping all this in mind, today I'm really going to focus, again, as the session is titled, Searching for, suitable grants. We're going to focus really on that stage. And part of the series, I imagine at least several of these other points in the life cycle of a grant will be covered. So, but yeah, just be aware, this is like early on in the process. This is when, you know, you're going to look for a grant, is probably when you're developing your project idea. So there are various types of funding available to the public. Competitive grants, those are going to be probably the grant type that you're most familiar with. It's also described as discretionary funding. Competitive funding, it's a process of proposal selection based on an evaluation of a reviewer or a team of reviewers. And generally the funding, it's going to be based on the merits of the application. So really competitive grants, as the name suggests, they're competitive. You're going to be applying for a limited number of funds against, you know, multiple other applications. So during this, it just kind of varies. The competitive grants, they vary based off of, you know, whatever is outlined by the funder. Usually the applicant must be very specific and talk about, you know, what they're going to do with the money, what exactly the budget is, what the time frame is. So the resources that I'm going to show you today are going to mostly fall within this competitive grant category. Another grant type that you might have heard of is called a formula grant. This is the type of program that has specified and predetermined criteria. They're usually administered by state agencies. They're not considered competitive because the applicants, you know, don't necessarily submit a proposal, but they do have to meet specific requirements. So an example of this, of a formula grant, would be Medicaid, or, you know, the Children's Health Insurance Program, or CHIP. So these are just kind of stipulations that as long as your group, you know, fulfills those requirements, they should be able to get that funding, but it's not necessarily like a competitive process. A third type of funding is called continuation funding. This is, you know, it's just a renewal of existing funding. Maybe your grant, when you were initially funded, you had, you know, multi-year, a couple of years that you were working on it. Sometimes, usually like the federal grants, they will allow a continuation funding award that, you know, after your initial funding period has ended, you can apply for additional funding. And those don't tend to be quite as stringent because you've already kind of, you know, been granted the initial award. And then the final type of grant is called a pass-through grant. And these are issued by a federal agency to a state agency or an institution. These are considered prime recipients. These prime recipients then will issue funds to sub-recipients, and that's the language that you might see called sub-awards. So, you know, an organization might have gotten a larger grant, and then they are essentially going to issue kind of mini grants based off of, you know, whatever criteria. So the CARES Act is a good example of that recently. So, yes, so in addition to the various types of funding, there are various types of funders. So, you know, when you're in this process of trying to get your project idea off the ground, you know, you need to identify as many potential sources as possible for your organization. And you've got to research the primary sources of the funding. And really the two different types are federal versus foundation. And so the differences between these two, they are quite different. Federal agencies, they tend to have more funds available, and then they have higher dollar amounts for their awards, but they do, you know, tend to be really competitive. So kind of the benefit of the amount of money that they have is kind of offset by the fact that there's probably going to be a lot of people applying for them. Federal agencies, they're more likely to pay, you know, all of the project costs and also cover indirect costs. They also tend to provide support during the concept development and proposal design stage. Federal program officers for grants are usually really responsive to people that reach out to them. So if you have a question with the federal grant, they're going to have those contacts prominently displayed on the funding announcements. And then also, as we talked with those past or with those renewal grants, in a federal grant, they will be really upfront and tell you if there's a possibility that you could renew your award later on. Some disadvantages of federal funding is, they're very lengthy. They're really specific. The requirements are stringent. I imagine probably for the group here, they're going to be more difficult to apply for, because on a lot of occasions, the federal people writing the federal grants, they have a team of people helping them write the grants. So if you're just kind of from an organization where you're maybe the only person, a federal grant is going to be really ambitious, but it's not, out of the realm of possibilities. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about this, but always keep in mind that, in the back of your mind, why we're here. We're all, wanting to, make Georgia a healthier state. There are always going to be opportunities to partner with other groups. So if you can, for a federal grant, that might be an option. If you're just a one kind of stop shop at your organization, finding someone to partner with for a federal grant is definitely an option. Another thing that federal funding also requires, sometimes they'll request cost sharing. So, they'll fund you a certain amount, and then they may ask your institution to, put up money for a percentage or even match what they provide. That is just realistically not something, probably like a lot of small organizations can do. And probably really the biggest disadvantage is just how strict and stringent the review process is. They really go through, your proposal is submitted to a group of people who, essentially grade your proposal, and they're looking, they're comparing you against other places. So, you really kind of have to have all your stuff on together. So that's just a couple of the benefits and drawbacks of federal grants. The other type of grant is called a foundation grant. And foundation grants, these are classified by the IRS as initiating from a private foundation versus a public entity. So these are often referred to as either private, independent, or just family foundation grants. The funding for these grants, it comes from limited resources. For example, from an individual or a family, a corporation, maybe a small group of donors, versus a federal grant having like major support essentially with our tax dollars. So some advantages of private funding, the turnaround for the award is pretty quick. With a federal grant, they have 3 cycles throughout the year that that grants are due. With federal awards, grants are due in February, June, and October. And an example of, so if you submit your grant in February, the team of reviewers that looks at your grant, they're going to meet in June. So, you have quite a bit of a delay with the federal versus the foundation grant. Essentially, I mean, if you think about it, it's a foundation can kind of make up their own rules. They have whatever kind of application process they want. They might be a little bit more, they're not going to be they might not even have an official application form. So they also, another benefit is they're not going to get as many submissions. So they have less to review, and, there's a better shot of you actually getting this money. Let's see. Private sources, they also, another benefit is they might focus on emerging issues and new trends. and special interests. So they might be more willing to adapt by collaborating with other sources. So just keep that in mind. A disadvantage for private funding, there's a few of these. The award amount is going to be, generally a lot less than a federal award. You probably are not going to have like a team of people that you can reach out to at the foundation if you have a question. We'll see in a moment. Locating foundation grants is really difficult. And also a lot of the foundations, they don't even have like a website. So it's difficult to even just kind of find these. One thing that also, and I don't know if this will apply to anyone here, but generally there's kind of like a stigma at a university, at least, that like foundation funding is kind of like less of a big deal. It's not as prestigious. So, that might be something that you encounter in your organization. People might not want you to go for a smaller award. So right by now you have some background information on the types of grants and the different types of funders. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually pop out and search for some topics in 3 different resources. So this is where I am going to stop my video. Okay. And okay. So the first resource that I would like to share with you is called NIH Reporter. This just a caveat, you are not going to be able to go into NIH Reporter and search for active grants. But this is an incredibly important phase or step in the grant cycle where you need to really research, what has been funded in your area, what has been funded like geographically in your area, who is getting the money. So NIH Reporter is a resource that you're going to want to use when doing your background research to write and then apply for an award. So, and just to note, and we're going to go out in a second and you'll see there's kind of some branding on the page. We're going to look for, it's called the Reporter module. And what that stands for is Research Portfolio Online Reporting Tools, Expenditures, and Results. So what this does is it's a repository of every single NIH funded research project. You're going to be able to see the complete abstracts of projects that have been funded. You're going to be able to link to the funding announcement, and essentially what you'll be able to do is you'll see the announcement maybe from a couple of years ago that the organization, that's what they saw when they were applying, and then you're going to see what their abstract looks like, and that's going to be like really good information for you because obviously that worked for them. So they got their grant funded, so it's just a really good example to kind of look for. So I'm going to open this, scoot this over. Hopefully, I think you can see my screen. Can you see? Okay. So this is the Reporter website. This is a free resource. You can just go there. You can Google, NIH Reporter. The website address is up here. So yes, so let me just kind of orient you to this first page. This is kind of an interesting little graphic right here, the active funding by state. And just to preface, you can search NIH Reporter a variety of ways. So what I'm going to show you today is just kind of how I do it, but please just do what works best for you. But let's look at the active funding by state for Georgia. What we're going to do is we're going to see specifically for Georgia, the NIH has funded over 1,700 projects. What is that? 921 billion, I guess. Yeah. That's how much money. Again, so these are not active grants that you can apply for, but these are rather projects that have been already funded. So let me just go to the top here. I'm going to show you, because I want to show you what a record looks like. So at the top part of NIH Reporter, you're going to see the abstract text. Again, this is exactly what this organization who got funded. They're called Virtually Better Incorporated. This was their abstract that they submitted to the funder. They have included their project narrative here. There's some project terms that they have indexed. Can scroll down, we can see that the PI for this specific project, we have her name, we can email her. We have another PI. We have the program official, which this would be the entity at this organization, or the NIH, I guess, who was assigned to kind of manage this grant. We get some information about this organization. Something that's interesting that, I'm happy to kind of see is like, if you are a for-profit, you still can get federal grants. This group right here, Virtually Better Incorporated, they're a domestic for-profit group. We can scroll down, and to me, this is the information that's going to be really useful to you. You can actually click out from NIH Reporter to the foundation, or to the funding announcement. So I'm just going to do that really quick. And let's go down. Let me go back just really quick to say, okay. So just to give you some information, like when you go to that FOA, you're going to see it's outdated, of course, because the award has already been funded. But you'll see the project start date was 2014. The project end date is 2022. Some of these grants, they take a long time to kind of, multi-year projects. This group applied, and they weren't, told that they got the award until 2019. So sometimes it just kind of works out that way. But yes, so here is exactly what the Virtually Better, their grant writing team, they saw this announcement, they read through all of this, and then they wrote their grant and it got funded. So to me, this is very helpful information. You can see what, the funding entity, they were the National Institute of Mental Health. You get to see what they requested and then what this group did to actually get their money. And as I mentioned before, you can totally, it's not off limits to reach out and contact people. If you had a similar project that you were working on, you can email Margot Larson and ask her, for some help, or ask her what her process was like and things like that. So another thing that's kind of interesting is, so whenever you get federal funding, you have to make whatever your research, if you publish anything, you have to make that publicly available. So you can see here that after, this group got funded for this project, they did publish some articles, and they're linked right here. So if you can go out and read the full text of those articles. So that's just kind of how, I was showing you kind of how to browse. There's another way, obviously, you're going to want to search, you're going to have an idea in mind and specific things that you're going to want to search for. So what I did is I just kind of have a hypothetical, because I know we have people on the call today from various different types of organizations, and people are going to, watch the recording. They're going to be from different, places too. So I picked just kind of a generic, let's pretend that I am in a small rural Georgia town, and I work, maybe with the public health department, and we've noticed an uptick in teen pregnancy, and we want to see what kind of funding is out there to kind of counter, make that situation, decrease, the number of teen pregnancies. So what I'm going to do is I'm down here in the advanced projects area, and I'm just going to be very vague, very basic with my search terms. So I'm going to type in teen pregnancy. And since I'm here in Georgia, as you can see, there's a lot of different, you don't have to fill out all these fields. But I do want to limit to Georgia, just because I'm in Georgia. So I want to know exactly what's like applicable to me. And, you can fill out as much or as little as this as you want. Again, I just did teen pregnancy in Georgia. And I'm going to see how many projects were funded related to this topic. So there's going to be 78 projects that have been funded. Again, I'm thinking what has been funded in the past, what could maybe I apply for in the future. So I'm just going to click on this first one. So this is this group. Okay, so yeah, the Georgia State Department of Health was the one that actually got this grant. So they probably had a lot of people helping them write this. And I'm imagining it's a very large award. See the alert. Okay, so it's $160,000. But yeah, so you can see, this information is very helpful. You can go see what the funding announcement. Okay, that one's not live anymore. But you could Google that, I think, and it would still take you to a version of it. This is telling me this is the center that issued the money. So, maybe this is a group that I want to look for. This is a federal section that I'm going to, maybe want to see if they have any future awards. So I'm going to move on, because really what I wanted to do is just kind of show you how NIH Reporter can kind of support you during that, information gathering phase when you're trying to figure out, maybe what your project is going to be. You might get some ideas from things that have been funded in the past. So, okay, so that was NIH Reporter. The next resource that I'm going to talk to you about, and I'm sure this is the most popular one, and it is, really good resource. For federal grants, grants.gov is, it's a great, it's free. This is really your essential resource for, any of the main, public funders of research. So again, I just want to reiterate that on NIH Reporter, you can't find active grants. However, you can on grants.gov. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of grants.gov. I'm not going to spend forever on this one, because I feel like you're probably have seen this. And if you're like me, I feel like when I come to grants.gov, this is very busy for me. Just there's all kind, there's good information, but it's a lot. So when I'm searching for a grant, I just click right here to search grants. And so what it's going to do is it's going to default to searching both posted, which means it's an active grant, and forecasted grants. And a forecasted grant is something that they think in the future they're going to have funding for. And they usually, with a forecasted grant, will tell you, we think we're going to put the announcement up on this specific day, May the 10th, 2022. If you want to know only what's out there at this very moment, I would obviously recommend unchecking that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go back to that same search that we were looking for in the NIH Reporter about teen pregnancy. And I just want to know, right now, what is actively out there, related to teen pregnancy. in grants.gov. So, okay, so what I did, we've got 117 results. Let's say I don't want to see the forecast. I don't want to know what's out there right now. We've got, several opportunities. One thing to keep in mind about federal grants is a lot of these are going to be tied to research, which obviously for, the people joining today are probably not involved in research, but you can, as I mentioned earlier, you can partner with a research entity, and a lot of times you could pair some kind of research with a community kind of intervention. That's something that can happen with grant funding. It just depends on how creative you get with the budget and how you write that. So let's just look at this first one. So this one is, so we can see that they posted it April the 5th. It's going to be due June the 14th. That's a really short amount of time, especially if you're just seeing it like right now. This would be an example of a time where I, especially if it was just me by myself, would probably not put this grant in at this moment. What I would probably do is reach out, and I'm going to click on this so we can see. Okay, here's the funding announcement. What I would probably do, since the deadline is so tight with this one, is I would search this funding announcement for the contact, and I would just ask them, I would just ask them in the future, do you think this is something that you might fund again? Because I found a lot of times that, if it's not exactly the same award available next year, it might be very similar. So that's just definitely something to think about. So, but yeah, so here we go. We can see everything. This is a 55-page document. I won't make you read through it all. But yeah, so here are the agency contacts. If you had any questions, if you wanted to know if you were eligible, I would definitely find that out first before I put in all the work, because it's, for a federal grant, it's going to be quite a lengthy process. I'm going to go back and just show you. I'm going to click off of posted and just only look at forecasted, and I'll say one thing to do. One thing that I really like about this with grants.gov is, let's say this particular opportunity, it's from the CDC. What are we today? It's May the 10th. They forecasted that they would post this on May the 4th. Obviously that didn't happen. So what you could do, and what I would recommend doing, is subscribing to this. And anytime there's any kind of change or movement on this application or this award, you're going to get an email alert telling you, they might say, oh, we've, postponed it until the fall, or, etc. So yeah, the subscribe is your friend with grants.gov. The last resource that I want to go through is, let's see, it's called Foundation Directory Online. And so there's Foundation Directory Online has a free version, a middle tier version, and a higher tier, just of what you can access on their site. So I was very reluctant. I went back and forth on what I wanted to show you. I didn't want to show you something that cost money. However, this resource actually, to me, it's worth it. So the version right on the screen right now is for the quick start version. This one's free. When you log on to Foundation Directory Online, to use the free version, you just have to, obviously you have to register. And this is what your screen This is really what you're limited to searching with the free version. This is good if you happen to know of an organization that you want to apply for. For example, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Let's say you just wanted to type that in and look up information about them. You can do that here, but you're not going to really be able to search for foundation grants. It's more like you already know the organization. Let's type them in and see, how much, what kind of projects they funded. And essentially the quick start version of Foundation Directory Online, it's mainly just going to show you those tax forms that you'll see. So again, as I said before, I was reluctant to show you something that you had to pay for. However, I do think this is very reasonable, and you could not necessarily have an annual subscription. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you Mercer has a professional account. It's $124 a month. And to me, that's worth it. You don't have to have it all the time. You can maybe just sign up maybe once a year and, look for some foundations. And you could actually, if you got really creative, you could, when you write your grant budget, you could potentially, when you get your grant budget, you could potentially write the cost of Foundation Directory Online into your grant proposal. So just kind of keep that in mind. So this resource, again, it's going to show you, it shows federal funding opportunities. However, to me, it's easier to search for the federal funding opportunities directly in grants.gov. But anyway, you can see there's there's over 1 million recipient records. You can see what these organizations, who they have funded. And again, what I want to emphasize is the fact that most, which this blows my mind the way it is now, considering how everything's online now, but most foundations, or a lot of them at least, don't have a website. So, how are you going to find the funding opportunities? Okay, so here is Foundation Directory Online Professional. It functions differently from grants.gov in a sense that, so in grants.gov, we were looking at specific calls for funding. Here's a notice of funding announcement in grants.gov. It was put out on this date for this amount, and this is exactly what they want, to get funded through that federal grant. Foundations, they might not actually have a specific call of funding at a certain time. They may just every year give out however much money they want to whatever, organization or whatever causes that kind of are in line with their beliefs and their goals and all that. So, so sometimes you will find a request for proposals, also known as an RFP. You will sometimes find those, but you won't always find those. So just kind of keep that in mind. And let's see. So most of the information in this resource you're going to find are funder profiles. You're going to be able to see each foundation's, what their patterns of giving are, what projects they fund, the amounts they fund. Geographically, you're going to see where they're located. And you will probably see the contact information for these groups. So as you can see, this landing page is pretty basic. I'm just going to uncheck this federal funders because I don't want that to kind of clutter. I really just want to search just for foundation groups. And in keeping with the same topic before, I'm going to search for teen pregnancy. And it's a pretty simple, just search bar. And I'm going to hit search. And so this is interesting because you can see here the terms, despite the terms that I use, teen pregnancy, this resource actually, they have a controlled vocabulary that they're looking for all these other terms too. So, depending on what your situation is, these terms might not all fit for you. I actually, for me, in my hypothetical situation, I think those are actually really good terms. So I'm going to keep them in. I see, oh, okay, wow, there's a lot of grant makers. I don't know if I have the time to look through all those. So let me go to advanced. And I'm just going to look at the geographic focus. I'm going to type in Georgia because that's where I'm at. This field right here, location, this is going to be the location of the grant maker or the location of someone who's received the money. That's not what I'm interested in right now. I want to see what locations the grant maker funds. So I'm going to redo my search. We're going to take our results from over 2,000 to 129. And so what we're seeing here, there are 129 grant makers or foundation groups who are making, who have made over 440 awards to 27 recipients in Georgia. And if you count all of these awards, it's over $15 million. So we're seeing here the different groups and what exactly that they funded. So what I'm going to do is, I went into this one earlier, and this is a good one to kind of look at. So this grant maker or foundation is called the William Howard Flowers Jr. Foundation. They have given out in the past 610 grants to 190 organizations. You'll get an idea of about how big the grant is. Remember on grants.gov, those were in the like $100,000 range. For here, this group, their most common grant amount is $15,000. So it's much, more modest. Well, who did they give money to? We can see that the recipient over the past several years has been, actually, it's been one group, the Georgia Campaign for Adolescent Power and Potential. I'm going to click on that and show you what that looks like. Foundation Directory Online will show you, a little bit of information about this this group. Who are these who are these people that receive this money? It looks like they must have a really good grant writing team because they've received, nearly 300 grants from almost 80 people. So, that's, and you can see who has funded them. Now, if I thought that the William Howard Flowers group was a good foundation for me to submit to, I might also consider some of these other ones because they funded this group who seems to be doing similar things that I want to do. So, so there is that. Okay, let me go down and show you. So those are the grants that they've issued. Let's see more about the William Howard Flowers Foundation group. Let's kind of see what they're about. They fund these various subjects. Their geographical focus are these areas, kind of oddly specific. The population groups, low income, economically disadvantaged. If I'm in a rural area of Georgia, to me, obviously that sounds like it's pretty on target. We're not getting a whole lot of information. They were established in 1991. And this is what I was telling you before. These are like right now the live applications that they're accepting. And you can see they don't have anything listed here. That doesn't mean that they're not available. They just don't happen to have a specific announcement, a call out right now. I'm going to go down And this is the part that is probably going to be really beneficial, is you're going to get these individuals' names, and those are going to be the people that you're going to want to reach out to if you have questions, or if you're interested in applying for this, for applying for money from this group. I'll just kind of, because we're running short, well, I'll show you. William Howard Flowers Foundation. I'm just going to do a Google search for that. And I did this earlier today, and there's absolutely no website for the William Howard Flowers group. All of this information is just, well, that's the page we were on. All of this information is really just information about the organization. There's not an official website. So it's kind of frustrating that, you know, how would you ever know about that group and the money that they have to offer on the table, you know, if you didn't have access to a resource like this. So I think that's kind of it for me with showing you specific resources. The last thing that I want to do today is really just in the last little bit of time. Let's see. I'm going to turn my video on again. Okay. So the last thing I want to go over is really just some tips. As you can see, you know, when you're looking for grant opportunities, it's not just like, it's not like looking for a job, you know. It's like you kind of have to think about, what is your project? Who is your audience? What do you hope to accomplish? You know, maybe have kind of a loose idea, and you have to do your research before you actually start, you know, seeing what grants are out there. When you are looking at potential funders, you need to ask yourself, you know, do you meet their requirements? Is your, you know, mission, you know, or is your project in line with the mission of that group? And this is especially true for like a foundation group. So yeah, you want to see what other organizations have been funded. And it's also, and I've mentioned this a couple of times already, you know, do you know anyone in the organization? There's absolutely nothing that says that you are not allowed to talk to these people. So some final tips is, again, this is very important. Just make sure that what you're thinking about doing fits, you know, what the group stands for. You can consider meeting with and reaching out to the funder. You should review previous funding announcements or requests for proposals. You should see, you know, what has been out there, what was funded. And also, it's a good idea to follow up after you submit your application. I like to, when possible, if there's a deadline, submit a couple of days ahead of time. And then, you know, then I'll reach out to the program officer or someone associated with the grant and just make sure, like, did I send you everything that you need? And then the final thing that I want to say is really just be persistent. I mean, if you don't get funded, you can, again, reach out to the program officer and ask them, you know, what could I do in the future to make my proposal more competitive? And with that, I'm not going to go into these, but I just wanted to throw them up here. These are some good resources if you just kind of want to see specific calls for grants that are available. These are some good resources that I've found. And you know, RHI Hub, that you guys should all know about that one, but it's just such a great resource. So that is actually, I think, all that I have. And I will, hold on. So here's my contact info. If you're anything like me and, you know, maybe you're like in the shower tomorrow and you're like, oh, wow, I should have asked her this question. You feel free and reach out to me later. And, you know, I'm around. I work Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So feel free, you know, reach out if you just want to brainstorm, anything like that. I'm here. And I think that's all I got, Dr. Williams.
Fantastic. Well, Carol Ann, awesome, awesome job. We certainly appreciate all of the information that you shared, the wonderful examples, the resources, taking time to go into detail and show us those resources. I learned a lot. I've been taking notes as well. So
You can come on
very,
down if you, down the hall if you want some face-to-face.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, I'm coming. So again, thank you so very much. I'm certain that our attendees certainly grasped a lot of knowledge from the information that you shared. And this session, of course, was recorded. So those that were not able to join virtually today can go back and watch it and obtain access to these resources that you shared. Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any questions?
Great. I'm good. I'm glad.
Okay. Okay, someone said in the chat, this was a great session. I learned a lot. Someone also said I was making notes, but hate to miss anything. Will we get a copy of the PowerPoint?
Yeah,
Uh,
I can share that.
okay,
Mhm.
awesome. So yes, we'll make sure that we send it out to those that attended, and also you can go back and watch the recording.
I have a question.
Yes.
I noticed that what is it? I'm in a note. The foundation director online thing is like $124 a month for a company, and we don't have that kind of budget.
I know. It's frustrating. What I did was, and I was very reluctant. There's a medium tier. It's like $34. You're not going to have access to everything. But yeah, I was reluctant, as I said, to show a resource that you had to pay money for. But I mean, there is not a comprehensive anything that shows foundations out there. And as you saw, if you were to just Google that group, they don't even have a website. So I would say, again, I know money is tight. Obviously, if you're applying for grants, you need money. But maybe, one thing that you could do is potentially, you don't have to subscribe for a whole year. Maybe you could just do like a month, a year or something like that. But yeah, so sorry about that. But yeah, and then I also mentioned, when you apply for a grant, you could actually request funds for the foundation directory if you got creative in your budget. So
also the public libraries, particularly the one on Washington Street here in Bibb County, they have a whole grant section open for people to use.
okay, that's good.
Yeah, they're a great resource, and it's sort of in fact, they have some seminars, they have modules. I have some friends that wanted to start a foundation, a nonprofit to work with domestic violence and abused children and families. And they went there and got a lot of resources. So I just suggest that.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Thank you both. I'm going to check the public library. Everything is free.
Yeah. And one thing about public libraries is they might make you like physically come in. But yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you both. Any other questions? Okay, well, hearing none, again, thank you so much, Ms. Curry, for your time today and sharing all of your knowledge, information, and resources with us. We greatly, greatly appreciate it and certainly look forward to working with you more in the near future.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Good luck, everybody. Hope you get funded.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, on the screen, you'll see that we have 3 more seminars coming up across the next 3 months. Proposal planning and design in June, engaging communities with enthusiastic communication in July, and activity assessment amidst implementation in August. So if you have not registered for these, please make sure that you visit our website at georgiaruralhealth.org and go to the grant program webpage, register for these seminars, and join us on those respective days. Thank you so much, Ms. Curry. Thank you for all who attended, and we look forward to seeing you next time.